So I was wondering why the news regarding the recent Brian Williams debacle was coming to light now after so many years. Then it occurred to me that any good intelligent alarm clock, especially a metaphysical one which has failed in its task, will do what it can to complete it. In this case, get louder. Bear with me and I'll explain. So many people these days consider themselves awake simply because they have come to realize that it's possible to be in a very real slumber such as has reached epidemic proportions on this beautiful spherical spaceship we call Earth. However, the simple recognition that it's possible to be asleep in an existential sense and arise from it does not come close to amounting to being awake. It's only then that the real work begins, not ends. In the lucid dreaming world, one widely recognized method of determining whether or not you're dreaming is to try to read a digital readout. If you can read it, then you're awake. If the numbers are scrambled or illegible, then you can be sure you're dreaming. It's really pretty simple, unless your real-world digital appliance is actually on the fritz, in which case you're on your own. Unfortunately, we do not have such an effective test when we're in the waking state, which we might refer to as normal, non-sleeping, everyday life. That's life, and it's a shame because the human race could really use an accurate tool for determining whether or not one is awake in a philosophical, worldly sense. These days, many self-professed awake individuals who truly believe themselves to be awake will point to this or that as evidence that they are in fact awake. I offer a word of caution and a suggestion. Please, for humanity's sake, take a really close look and do your best to be honest with yourself. Is it possible that you're mistaking the process of awakening for being awake, and you may in fact still be caught up in a dream of sorts? One such case in point is the enlightened deduction that Fox News is nothing but fabricated fantasies churning out propaganda for the conservatives, the Republicans, the neocons, the New World Order, sympathizers, the Illuminati, global elite, Rupert Murdoch, or whatever term they choose to apply to their nemesis. If it weren't for the inexplicable fact that Fox News actually has viewers, I would say that the aforementioned understanding was self-evident. The fact that it does have viewers only proves to me that there is a very real and disturbing possibility of being asleep, and that the zombification of humans is a very real thing which is taking place not only on Hollywood movie screens, but right before our eyes. I could count it as fortunate that self-proclaimed awakened ones clearly can see this, and I do, but let's not pat ourselves on the back just yet. The fact is that waking up to the reality of what Fox News actually is, and then switching the channel to NBC, CBS, whatever, is akin to realizing that the 45 caliber bullet to the heart is fatal, but believing a 22 caliber bullet is of no consequence. The fact is that all television programming has an agenda. It isn't called programming for nothing. One might argue that it's not all bad, but we need not fret over the percentages. Anyway, I'm not suggesting that you don't watch television at all. It can be useful to take barometric measurements of pressures being placed on society if you can read between the lines while remaining sufficiently insulated from their effects. However, if you do subject yourself to TV, then you should be aware of what the agenda is and not lose track of it. Additionally, I'd like to point out that your television is just one machine, and every channel and every news outlet is a cog in that machine. Fox News just happens to be the biggest by far and the most obvious cog in that machine. This is by design because it facilitates all the other, much smaller cogs hiding behind it. It would be laughable that television programmers would present such obvious tactics if they didn't work so pathetically well on so many people. Sadly, they do, and there is more to this deviously genius plot. Fox grabs the attention of the population who are either incapable of critical thinking or for whatever reason refuse to employ it. Meanwhile, many self-proclaimed awakened choose to point fingers, poke fun, or worse, hurl expletives towards Fox, and then immediately deem that the appropriate response is to watch another channel. This, I would suggest, is not the wisest of responses. If this is you, I respectfully ask, are you able to tell the time on the reality-testing digital watch? Or are you still awakening? They are all cogs in the same machine. If nothing else, please consider this. Everything on your TV is by design. It's what they want you to see. Everything you hear on the news, no matter which station, is what they want you to hear. And I use the term news in this case just as loosely as Fox does. So, I would like to thank Brian Williams and the proverbial alarm clock for getting louder and attempting to wake us up to the realization that nearly all, if not all, of the mainstream media is a fox in sheep's clothing. Let me be clear, in my humble opinion, Brian Williams did not make a mistake. He lied. Then instead of owning up to it and taking responsibility, he offered, in the guise of an apology, an excuse. The excuse that he made a mistake, which is just another lie on top of the lie. On top of that, he's voluntarily removed himself from the air temporarily. This I take to mean, well, I'm going to lie low, pun intended, for a while until everybody forgets about this. Well, Mr. Williams, I'll never forget. Now, if you disagree with holding journalists to a high standard, that's your choice, but then you get what you deserve. For me, that would be like trading in a trusted position for a cannibalistic witch doctor. Personally, I seek the truth. So those whose profession it supposedly is to share with us the truth, who then knowingly and willingly fabricates the truth, does not deserve to be in a position of telling me the truth. It's bad enough that we accept the fact that most of our politicians are pathological liars and stand by idly. It is a sign that the conditioning of mankind is nearly complete when we willingly apologize for our captors at every turn. Can you hear the alarm clock? It's so loud some of your ears might be hearing it right now. Why? Because it's high time we all wake up. Mankind is counting on each of us. Dreams are only sweet when they are realized in the real world. Please, again, if nothing else, ask yourself, sincerely, am I truly awake? I'd like to end this with just a couple tips, take it or leave it. Number one, if you, even for a half second, have to ask whether or not you're awake, you're not. There's no shame in that. It just means you are awakening. Trust me, if you're awake, then you'll know it. I mean, really, how could you be awake if you didn't know you were awake? Number two, if you still believe everything you see and hear, you're not awake. If you don't, then you're awakening. If you believe none of it without confirming it for yourself to the best of your ability, then you are making a real bona fide attempt to wake up. Congratulations, and thank you, sincerely. That's worthy of a hearty pat on the back, in my opinion. So again, please, 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 ask the questions. And just in case you're wondering, the fact that I've most certainly offended Fox News fans and maybe others is not of concern, and I make no apologies. If one were to tell me they enjoy it for entertainment value, I could respect that. After all, who doesn't like being entertained? Otherwise, I suggest some research into cognitive dissonance. It's a very, very powerful impediment, and if you're suffering from it, you are another cog in their machine. The question is, have you chosen to be, or was it surreptitiously foisted on you? That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Peace.